Welcome to the taken hour, where the last worries of your day softly fade into the quiet of a distant sky. As you settle under your blankets, take a slow breath in and a quieter breath out. Tonight, we are walking along a silent hospital floor, where something gentle waits between the walls. If you wish to drift with us each night, let your mind subscribe to this calm place and return whenever sleep feels far away. Fluorescent lights dim, monitors hum like patient constellations. Beyond the glass doors, night rain brushes the city. A nurse steps into the corridor, feeling the floor cool beneath her shoes, unaware that reality here has started to loosen, kindly, like a curtain before a dream. The night shift breathes differently. On this floor, sounds arrive wrapped in cotton. A distant elevator sighs. A heart monitor gives a slow, sleepy rhythm. The nurse moves from room to room, her steps unhurried, her hands warm from checking pulses and smoothing blankets. The hallway smells of antiseptic and chamomile soap, a strange, comforting blend. The lights above are slightly dimmed, turning white walls into soft gradients of blue. In this hour, time feels elastic, stretched like a quiet song. The nurse pauses at the far end, noticing how the air seems thicker there, as if holding its breath. A gentle tingle brushes along her skin, not cold, not frightening, only a suggestion that something unseen is also awake and watching, kindly. She checks the chart at the desk, its pages fluttering slightly, though no draft is felt. The list of patients feels reassuringly ordinary. She traces the lines with sleepy eyes, memorizing room numbers, conditions, the small notes of comfort. Outside, thunder rolls like a faraway drum, muffled by thick walls. Inside, each door is half open, letting out ribbons of warm light. She moves toward a room where a patient rests after a long, stable night. His breath was even, peaceful the last time she looked. As she approaches, the hallway hum deepens. The monitor inside gives a soft, continuous tone, not alarming, more like a lullaby in a different key. The nurse pauses, feeling the strange stillness, as if the floor itself is gently listening. The door to the room is ajar, inviting, but unusually silent. She nudges it wider with her fingers, careful not to wake the patient. Inside, the bed is neatly made, covers turned down as if waiting. The monitor is on, its quiet display steady. Yet she does not see him at first. The curtains are drawn, leaving only a soft line of light across the floor. Her heartbeat slows, not from fear, but from the strange weightlessness of the moment. Then, almost lazily, her gaze lifts. There he is, standing near the far wall, hands resting at his sides, posture relaxed, like someone about to step into a warm bath. The air around him shimmers as if reflecting unseen stars. For a breathless second, nothing moves. The patient looks peaceful, eyes half closed, as though listening to a distant melody. The nurse opens her mouth to speak, but the sound never forms. Instead, the wall behind him becomes pale and translucent, like fog lit from within. He leans back with effortless trust, and his body passes through as if the solid surface were only mist. No struggle, no fear, only a slow, graceful drift. The room remains silent. The monitor does not alarm. The air fills with a faint scent, like rain on warm stone. The nurse simply watches, more mesmerized than afraid, as the last outline of his shoulder dissolves into the softly glowing surface, leaving the room tender and still. She stands very still, her fingers curled gently around the edge of the door. Every instinct tells her she should call someone, press a button, break the silence. Yet what she has seen does not fit alarms. The room feels undisturbed, lovingly composed, as if an invisible presence smoothed every wrinkle. The monitor, now without its patient, shows quiet patterns that look more like drifting constellations than vital signs. A distant chime echoes from the corridor, musical and low. The nurse's breath slows to match it. Something in her understands this, was not a fall, not a disappearance of pain, but a crossing orchestrated with immense care. Instead of terror, a gentle curiosity settles over her like a blanket. Soon, her body remembers its duties. She steps closer, verifies the empty bed, the absence of weight upon the mattress, the quiet cords resting loosely like shed threads. She checks the bathroom, the corners, speaking softly into the air, words that dissolve before reaching walls. There is no trace of panic in her movements, only deliberate care. A part of her expects to wake up at the break room table, coffee cold beside her. But the world holds steady. Outside the window, the city glows in soft halos. On this floor, time continues. She notes the details with practiced calm, gently closing the door as though the room still cradles someone fragile, watched now by something more than human eyes. Back at the nurse's station, the overhead clock moves with unhurried certainty. She opens the admission log, its lines a familiar landscape of ink and order. The patient's name is there, precisely where it should be, letters calm and solid. She runs her fingertip over it, feeling only paper. A quiet shiver moves along her spine, the memory of him vanishing through light. She considers calling the on-call physician, security, anyone who could anchor this moment in protocol. Yet the atmosphere on the floor remains peacefully intact. No alarms blare, no voices rise. It is as if the building itself has accepted this impossibility. She writes a small note to check on the room again later. Handwriting slow, thoughtful, steady. The rest of the shift unfolds like a slow tide. She checks IV lines, straightens pillows, whispers reassurance to half-awake patients whose dreams cling to their eyes. Every so often, she glances down the hallway toward the room where the wall opened like a curtain of light. Nothing else unusual happens. The strange constellations on the unused monitor fade back into ordinary readings before her next visit, as if embarrassed to be caught. By dawn, hospital sounds grow slightly brighter, wheels rolling, voices stirring, a distant door closing. The nurse feels both tired and strangely restored, like someone who has witnessed a secret sunrise. She leaves a final note about the missing patient, written gently, as though speaking respectfully to whatever listened. Morning light arrives in pale bands across the floor, turning the sterile tiles into something softer. Day staff filter in with fresh energy, bright voices tucked into their greetings. The nurse sips the last of her lukewarm drink, feeling the weight of the night settle on her shoulders like a soft coat. Remembering her duty, she opens the admission log to point out the patient's unexplained absence. Her finger slides down the page. The lines are neat, unchanged. But the name she seeks has vanished. The space where it belonged flows seamlessly, as if it was never written, never spoken. Her breath catches quietly. Gentle disbelief ripples through her, not cruel, not sharp, just a slow widening of a mystery already in motion. She compares the memory in her mind with the ink before her. She recalls the patient's calm eyes at admission, the quiet gratitude, the steady rhythm of his breathing. She remembers confirming his room number, checking his chart, listening to the soft hum of monitors. Everything about his presence felt real, as solid as the pen now resting in her hand. Yet the log denies him. The system holds no record. No digital trace appears when she searches. The more she looks, the gentler the world seems to insist that nothing is wrong, that all is complete. The realization settles in like a feather on water. Whatever happened to him is part of a pattern she has just begun to see. Instead of sounding an alarm, she finds herself listening. Listening to the low hum of electricity in the walls, the distant echo of footsteps, the soft sigh of air conditioning passing through vents like a steady breeze. This building is alive in its own quiet way. On this floor, where recovery hovers between hope and rest, the boundaries seem thinner. She remembers the shimmering wall, the ease with which he passed, the absence of fear in his posture. It felt less like escape, more like being invited home by something gentle and luminous. As the day grows brighter, her certainty does not fade. A door has opened in her understanding, and through it moves a kindness that does not require explanation. During her break, she sits by a window overlooking the city's morning haze. Cars move like quiet particles of light. Clouds unfurl in delicate layers. She closes her eyes briefly. Behind them, she sees again that pale, glowing surface swallowing the patient with absolute tenderness. No tearing, no shadow, as if designed for passage. A part of her wonders if exhaustion has painted illusions on her sense of reality. Yet the feeling that lingers is not confusion, but comfort. What sort of presence could rewrite a log so neatly, erase a name without cruelty, and open a wall like a doorway of silk? The thought wraps around her like warm air, a suggestion of guardians made of quiet starlight. She finishes her shift and steps into the outside daylight, leaving the hospital behind like a fading dream. Yet, as night returns and she walks down the same hallway again, the memory brightens instead of dimming. The corridor seems to recognize her, lights humming with a softer tone as she passes. Each door holds a sleeper. Each sleeper holds a story. On this floor, the unseen pattern continues its gentle work. She does not search for the missing name anymore. Instead, she moves with a new awareness, as if sharing the space with unseen companions who favor silence over spectacle. The hospital feels less like a cold structure, more like a vessel drifting through a kind and watching universe. As the next long night stretches, small details stand out. A pulse oximeter flickers in a pattern too rhythmic to be random. A reflection in polished floor tiles seems to hold stars instead of bulbs. The nurse tests the air near the room where the passage occurred. It is cooler, yet comforting, like shade on a warm evening. When she pauses there, a sense of being observed wraps around her, not invasive, but attentive, protective. A stray thought arrives, not in words, but in feeling. No one is lost here. Some are simply guided by hands not bound to doors or elevators. The thought makes her shoulders unclench. She continues her rounds, letting this unknown kindness walk beside her. Later, while adjusting a blanket, she notices something new. On the bedside table of a sleeping patient lies a small, translucent fragment, like a petal made from frozen moonlight. It emits a faint, soothing luminescence that barely touches the surroundings. She picks it up carefully. It feels neither cold nor warm, simply present, weightless, and firm. When she holds it nearer to the sleeping patient, their breathing deepens into a more peaceful rhythm, tension easing from their hands and jaw. She returns the fragment to the table, sensing it belongs there. No one else comments on it. The object seems visible only to her attention. She understands, without logic, that it is a gift from whatever moves beyond the walls. The fragment appears again in another room, hours later, as if it has quietly relocated where comfort is needed most. Each time she discovers it, she feels the same steady calm soaking through her thoughts. It is as though the floor has gained a small, portable piece of twilight that listens to fear and dissolves it. She begins to accept its wandering presence without surprise, like accepting clouds changing shape. Between checks, she imagines shapes of beings capable of slipping through matter, tending to unseen thresholds, leaving these glimmers as gentle signatures. There is no sense of demand, no sharp message, only reassurance. Around them, beeping and footsteps continue at a humane pace. The night grows softer, held in invisible arms. On another night, as rain whispers more insistently against the windows, a power fluctuation dims the lights for a heartbeat. In that brief shadow, she senses movement along the corridor wall, a slender curve of light drifting just beneath the surface, like a luminous river. When the lights return, the wall looks plain again, yet the feeling of presence remains stronger. She walks its length slowly, fingertips hovering close but not touching, as though greeting a polite neighbor. A warmth blooms in her chest, unconnected to fear or adrenaline. There is company here, ancient or distant, that never needed introductions. It aligns itself with her quiet purpose, easing pain, watching over sleep, turning frightening edges into rounded, gentle shapes. Gradually, she notices patterns. The nights when anxiety peaks in certain rooms, the shimmering deepens near those walls. When someone whispers fears into their pillow, soft luminescent threads appear at the edge of their vision, soothing as they drift off again. The wandering fragment of moon-like glass always rests by the bed of the most restless patient, then later disappears without a sound. She documents nothing of this in official notes, but her heart records every detail. This is less an intrusion and more a gentle collaboration. Something beyond human hands is guiding those who are ready and comforting those who must still remain, always choosing grace over drama, always folding terror into drowsy understanding. One evening, a patient on the edge of restless sleep asks in a fragile voice if someone is standing by the wall. The nurse follows their gaze. The surface there gleams with a hint of pale hue, like dawn behind frosted glass. She answers softly that sometimes the floor feels extra watchful at night, like it does not want anyone to feel alone. The patient's eyes relax, as if this confirms something already known. They turn onto their side, shoulders loosening. The wall brightens almost imperceptibly, then settles, like a satisfied exhale. The nurse remains a moment longer, honoring the shared secret. These encounters are not threats. They are lullabies made of architecture and starlight, circling in silent guardianship. On the night corresponding to the phase of the moon that once illuminated the first passage, the air on the floor turns particularly clear. Monitors sound softer, carts roll more smoothly, voices naturally drop to murmurs. The nurse steps once more past the room that began her understanding. It now houses a different patient who sleeps peacefully, chest rising in unhurried waves. Near the head of the bed, the wandering fragment appears again, casting a pale halo that barely touches the pillow. In that glow, she thinks she sees an outline, tall, slender, almost translucent, leaning close as if listening to the sleeper's dreams. When she blinks, the outline is gone. Yet the impression of extraordinary tenderness remains like a lingering scent. She finds that if she slows her own breathing when entering such rooms, the luminous presence seems to respond. The lights soften, The fragment gleams more steadily. Machines fall into quieter rhythms. It is as though the unseen visitors tune themselves to her calm, or perhaps she tunes herself to theirs. No words form in her mind, yet messages arrive as feelings. Continue. You are seen. No one here is abandoned to the dark. She carries these impressions like secret badges on her uniform, invisible but strengthening. The hospital at night no longer feels like a lonely tunnel. It is a threshold, gently staffed by humans and something older, both dedicated to guiding fragile hours toward morning. Sometimes she wonders where the patient went after stepping through the wall. Her imagination shapes a corridor beyond matter, lined with the same soft lights, but opening into vast, quiet vistas. She thinks of structures hung in space like lanterns, where pain dissolves as easily as breath on glass. Perhaps those who cross do not walk alone, but are met by radiant forms that move like liquid dawn. The thought is so gentle it almost lulls her into sleep on her feet. And that is the curious comfort. The mystery does not sharpen reality into fear. It blurs it into a landscape where transition is just another word for being carefully carried forward. One particularly quiet night, when storms have swept the city clean, the entire floor feels suspended, like a ship in still water. She sits at the station, checking charts, when a soft, luminous pulse ripples along the edge of the ceiling, moving down the corridor with unhurried grace. It pauses near one room, then another, like a lantern choosing where to linger. As it passes her, she feels a pressure over her heart, not heavy, but anchoring, as though thanked. The sensation leaves her eyes warm. She understands. The presences are aware of her awareness, appreciative of her lack of fear. In their silent language of light and timing, they have accepted her as part of the night's quiet arrangement. After that, she sometimes senses them before any shimmer shows. The air thickens in a pleasant way, like warm water. Patients who had been restless begin to sigh and settle without medication. Monitors display steady, graceful lines. There are no dramatic miracles, only small mercies, eased breathing, softened nightmares, silent resolutions inside weary minds. The presences seem to specialize in these modest wonders. She comes to realize they do not change fate violently. They polish its edges. They do not erase suffering, but they hold it so it hurts less. The memory of the man walking through the wall becomes their clearest signature, proof that when they lead someone away, it is through a door carved from empathy. The disappearance from the admission log remains the sole overt impossibility. No one else mentions it. To colleagues, the census is complete, tidy, balanced. She alone remembers the erased name, preserved not as a riddle, but as a reassurance that the universe can be edited with kindness. The silent editors seem to prefer that official records reflect closure rather than absence. She decides not to resist. This discretion feels aligned with their gentle methods. Instead of arguing with screens and paper, she invests her energy in being present, welcoming their subtle help when the corridor grows dense with unspoken fear. Together, they keep the nights from feeling like narrow tunnels, turning them into wide, star-dusted rooms of rest. On another night, transport brings a new arrival to the floor. The patient's eyes hold the exhausted look of someone who has traveled through too many harsh lights. As they are settled into bed, the nurse senses a quiet stir against the wall, a ripple that barely disturbs the paint. When she dims the room lights, a thin, vertical line of pale sheen appears near the corner, only for a second, as if checking, measuring. The patient's breathing evens out quicker than expected. The nurse smiles, a small, private acknowledgement. Whoever guides these unseen doors has already taken interest, not to steal anyone away, but to stand ready, should fear or pain grow taller than the human frame can hold. She begins to talk softly to the air when alone, words shaped like gratitude, not demanding, not pleading, simply recognizing the partnership. Thank you for helping them sleep. Thank you for carrying the ones who cannot stay. Her whispers vanish into vents and corners, but the responses arrive in other forms. A sudden hush after a bout of coughing, a monitor calming without intervention, a patient waking with an inexplicable sense of having been held. The nurse feels less like a single person against the long, deep night, and more like a member of a quiet constellation, each point of light doing what it can to soften the journey of fragile bodies and wandering minds. On some shifts, she senses corridors beyond the visible ones, running parallel to human space. These imagined halls feel lined with gentle currents, where luminous shapes drift, listening to the murmurs of both patients and staff. She never sees them fully, yet their outlines are suggested whenever a wall glows slightly, whenever the wandering fragment reappears. They give the impression of tall, elongated forms, smooth and translucent, with centers that shine like compressed dawn. Instead of faces, they possess fields of attention that rest carefully on those in need. They never rush. They never loom. They move at the pace of a slow breath, existing to notice what might otherwise be overlooked in the mechanical rhythm of care. One night, standing alone by the supply closet, she feels a nudge at the edge of her awareness, like a gentle question. Turning, she finds no one, yet the air seems to shape itself into invitation. She steps closer to the blank wall, the same unremarkable surface she has passed hundreds of times. Carefully, she lifts her hand and hovers it an inch away. A cool, velvety sensation rises to meet her palm. Not quite touch, not quite distance. For a moment, she perceives a vast, quiet expanse on the other side. No sound of machines, only the soft roar of distant stars. The impression is fleeting but clear. She withdraws her hand with a calm heart, accepted but not summoned. She understands then that these presences respect boundaries. They do not drag, they invite. They do not impose visions, they offer glimpses to those who are already listening. She returns to her rounds with deeper ease, carrying within her the memory of that vast quiet. When she tucks in a patient, she imagines that if their fear grows, a gentle hand of light may emerge from the wall to rest above their heart, unseen yet effective. This thought is not doctrine or rule, it is a lullaby she hums internally. The corridors, once simply functional, now feel like the surface of a deep lake, with kind, ancient shapes gliding beneath, supporting each fragile boat that floats above. On another shift, a family sits quietly at a bedside, eyes swollen with the ache of waiting. The room air feels tense, thin, stretched. The nurse steps out briefly to give them privacy, and as she moves down the hallway, she notices the light outside their door deepen to a gentle violet hue. A soft horizontal shimmer ripples across the wall, as if something has arrived. When she re-enters later, the family's faces look strangely rested, even though nothing external has changed. The patient sleeps more peacefully. No one can explain the small relief that has settled over them. She can, silently. Something kind has passed through, not to take prematurely, but to cradle the heaviness that words cannot lift. The pattern becomes a rhythm she trusts. Where despair peaks, the walls glow subtly. Where panic flickers, unseen attention gathers. Where a soul leans toward a horizon beyond medicine, a passage gently prepares. She notices that after such nights, the admission logs and records never show gaps or errors. They are immaculate, as if lovingly edited. She realizes This is their signature too. Not chaos, but order. Not haunting, but housekeeping of a cosmic sort. The missing name that started it all stands as proof in her memory that sometimes mercy works quietly backstage, tidying outcomes so that the living can grieve without being snagged on unexplained details. During a lull, close to dawn, she leans back in her chair, eyelids heavy. The world narrows to the sound of her own breathing and a distant, rhythmic beeping. In the softened edges of exhaustion, she sees, just behind the nurse's station wall, a group of luminous figures standing in still communion. They are aligned like tall candles, their light hushed, each one oriented toward a different room. She cannot see details, only impressions, patience, attentiveness, deep wells of empathy. None of them step through. They simply remain, as if holding invisible threads that run to each bed. When she rubs her eyes, the vision fades. The comfort remains, settling into her like warm tea. In the following nights, she no longer questions whether the first experience was real. It has woven itself into the floor's identity. When new staff comment that this level feels strangely peaceful compared to others, she hides a knowing smile. Peaceful, yes, as if someone else is always on duty. She walks past the wall of the first passage and feels a resonance, like a chord faintly struck. This is where she first saw a human body treated not as a failing system, but as a beloved traveler granted a graceful exit. That memory, instead of haunting, has become her anchor during the most difficult moments, reminding her that leaving and resting can be guided with unearthly gentleness. Sometimes, when a patient hovers in uncertainty, not improving, not declining, she stands by their bed in the quiet hours and simply listens. If a faint shimmer gathers along the wall or above the ceiling vent, she knows they are not alone in their indecision. The presences feel no frustration. They radiate patience. If it is time, the room will soften and a path will unfold. If not, the glow will dim, leaving human care to continue. This shared responsibility soothes her. She no longer feels she must hold each outcome alone. The hospital's foundations seem rooted in more than concrete. They extend into whatever realm these companions inhabit, forming a continuous bridge of watching. On a particularly starless night, when the sky outside is the color of ink and the rain has not yet arrived, the floor feels unusually hushed. She walks past the first passage room and senses an invitation again, softer than memory. In a neighboring room, an elderly patient sleeps shallowly, breath fluttering. Between them, the wall brightens just enough to reveal its hidden depth. She places her palm near it, acknowledging. A tender coolness presses back. It occurs to her that these presences may be travelers themselves, tending to nodes of crossover in many worlds. This hospital floor happens to be one such node, chosen not for drama, but for its concentration of fragile thresholds. As the seasons turn outside, subtle changes echo within. Snow, then blossoms, then warm rain, though the hospital lighting is unchanging. Still, she senses shifts in the flavor of the unseen light. In winter, it feels like thick, protective blankets. In spring, like fresh air through open windows, even when glass remains closed. The presences adapt with the same unspoken responsiveness, always tuned to what hearts on the floor most need. Through all of it, the story of the man who walked through the wall stays with her, not as an exception, but as a revelation of the quiet rule. No one truly vanishes. They are either resting on this side of the wall or gently welcomed beyond. There is a night when exhaustion presses heavy, and she doubts herself for the first time in months. Did she misremember the missing name, the glowing passage, the fragments of light? As if in answer, the wandering shard appears directly on her desk. It hums with a faint radiance, edges rounded like a droplet paused mid-fall. She lifts it, watching tiny shifting constellations move inside. A feeling of affirmation pours through her, undeniable. Gently, she sets it down beside the call bell, where its glow becomes a small additional star among equipment lights. The floor seems to exhale. Doubt thins. She smiles, alone but surrounded, and continues her work with renewed, quiet faith. On another evening, she notices something almost playful. As she walks, the corridor lights dim a fraction of a second before her, then brighten just as she arrives beneath them, like a slow, silent wave. It is as if the unseen companions are matching her steps, creating a soft-lit path. The effect is subtle enough to dismiss, yet consistent enough to feel intentional. It does not startle her. Instead, the synchronized glow brings a sense of companionship, as though the floor itself has chosen her as its favored witness. The hospital remains the same for everyone else. For her, it has become a shared dream in which she cares for bodies, while luminous neighbors care for the spaces between breaths. On a rare break near midnight, she dims the station lights further and leans back, gaze unfocused. The building's sounds layer into a hypnotic pattern. Distant doors, shuffling steps, the sigh of vents. Beneath this, she detects an even deeper rhythm, like a slow cosmic heartbeat echoing through the concrete. It feels connected to the glowing walls, the passages, the edits in the logs. She realizes the presences are not isolated visitors, but part of a larger network that spans beyond her comprehension, touching many places where endings and beginnings brush close. The discovery is strangely lulling. In a vast, complex universe, kindness has organized itself into currents, and she has stumbled upon one of its quietest streams. The next time a patient's journey nears its end, the signs are familiar. Monitors slow, breaths lengthen, relatives whisper. She steps into the hall and feels the wall beside the door begin to glow with the color of distant dawn. No one else reacts. Inside, the patient's face smooths. The air grows velvety. There is no sudden drama, no visible figure stepping through. Yet she senses a door forming where solid material once defined limits, a quiet invitation shaped from light. When the final breath comes, it is as gentle as a sigh at the end of a lullaby. The glow fades like a closed book. Outside, the records later show a natural passing, precise and unremarkable. The truth is far more beautiful. She notices that after such transitions, the floor often feels lighter, as though a weight has been transferred, not simply removed. A late-night laughter from staff sounds less forced. A worried relative accepts coffee and rest. The presences seem to tidy not only charts, but emotional residue, sweeping away the jagged edges so sleepless minds can soften. This invisible hygiene fascinates her. It is the kind of magic that leaves no spectacle, only ease. She joins it in small ways: a hand on a shoulder, a chair moved closer to a bed, blinds tilted to block harsh glare. Human care and alien care overlap, each reinforcing the other, until the entire floor hums like a carefully tuned instrument. On certain nights, she feels close enough to the presences to nearly address them in her thoughts. She wonders where they rest, if they rest at all, or whether they flow continuously through matter, pausing wherever thresholds form. The answer arrives as sensation. They are most themselves in those moments when someone breathes between fear and trust, when a body teeters at the edge of surrender. Those instants are their favored home, not because of suffering, but because of the invitation to offer relief. They travel not to conquer, but to cradle. This realization loosens something long clenched inside her. The work she once saw as a guard against loss has become a shared ceremony of gentler crossings. One evening, as she walks past an empty stretch of corridor, a larger shimmer ripples ahead. The entire wall briefly turns translucent, revealing only a vast star-dusted expanse beyond. No frightening depths, only infinite softness. In that vision, she senses countless other floors like hers, suspended in the universe, each watched over by similar gentle currents. The glimpse lasts less than a blink, but its impact is enduring. She realizes that what she has seen is not an exception at all, but part of a larger, tender architecture. A network ensuring that everywhere people hover between pain and rest, there are unseen hands ready to help them step through whichever door opens next. After that, her fear of death quietly dissolves. Not in denial of grief, but in recognition of accompaniment. She continues to comfort families, to follow procedures, to document with precision. Yet underneath every action flows the certainty that nothing ends alone on this floor. The memory of the man walking through the wall now feels like an opening line in a story that never truly ends. Each night, as she begins her shift, she greets the corridor with a silent acknowledgement. The corridor, in response, offers its soft luminance. Together, they maintain a sanctuary where human hands and alien light weave sleep, solace, and passage into one seamless, hushed continuum. On a rain-brushed night, a new patient arrives who trembles at every sound. The nurse speaks softly, but fear clings stubbornly. Later, as the patient finally drifts toward uneasy sleep, the wall beside the bed blooms with the slightest silver sheen. The shard appears on the bedside table unbidden. The patient's breathing steadies, shoulders loosening, as if sensing a presence sitting watch. In that silent room, the nurse grasps the gentle genius of her companions. They never argue with fear. They outnumber it, surrounding it with so much softness it forgets itself. Outside, rain threads down the windows in vertical constellations. Inside, two forms stand guard, one with a stethoscope, one made entirely of slow, luminous trust. As weeks stretch, she notices that patients discharged from this floor often mention sleeping unusually well despite their circumstances. Some recall dreams of corridors filled with quiet stars, others of hands made of light resting over their pain. None of them know of the missing name or the passage in the wall, yet they carry fragments of its kindness. The nurse feels a quiet pride on behalf of the unseen hosts. This floor has become more than a unit number. It is a disguised harbor. The world outside remains loud and hurried. In here, nights unfold at the pace of healing breaths, gently supervised by entities who ask for nothing, content simply to keep watch. There comes an hour, deep in the night, when every monitor shows stable readings, and even the most anxious minds rest. The nurse walks the entire length of the corridor, floor cool underfoot, air smelling faintly of clean linen and quiet ozone. At each door, she pauses to listen, breath, rustle, peace. The walls hum with low, steady energy. In this rare, perfect equilibrium, she senses the presences less as figures and more as a continuous field of care, like a soft gravitational pull that keeps everyone gently in place. She feels part of it, her own attention woven in. If the first night was a question, this one is an answer. They are here, she is here, and together they are enough. She sometimes sits at the station and imagines telling this story to those who cannot see, describing walls that open without breaking, logs that adjust without lying, lights that follow footsteps in gratitude. She imagines whispering about patient travelers of starlit origin, who step through stone to escort those ready to leave, and linger to soothe those staying. But she knows this tale works best as a background lullaby, felt but not dissected. So she keeps it mostly in her heart, and in the slow, unrushed quality of her care. Those who rest here do not need to know the details. They only need to feel that, somehow, this floor is kinder than the dark outside. Whenever her mind drifts back to that early scene, the man leaning into the shimmering wall, she notices new nuances. The absence of wires tugging, the seamless release of gravity, the way the air changed scent. Those details reassure her that it was never about disappearance. It was choreography. A carefully guided step from one room to another, with no stumble in between. The missing name in the log now feels less like erasure and more like a closed chapter shelved neatly. The story continues beyond her reach, but not beyond someone's care. That understanding lulls her too. When she finally sleeps after a shift, her dreams are corridors of light where no one rushes, and doors open exactly when needed. On some off-duty nights, Lying in her own bed, she listens to the ambient sounds of her home and senses echoes of the hospital's quiet heartbeat. It comforts her to imagine that the same network of luminous guardians extends beyond that single floor, watching at intersections of worry everywhere. For her, though, the hospital corridor remains the clearest anchor, a place where she saw solid reality soften to make room for merciful physics. As sleep folds over her, she revisits its dim lights, its polished floors, and the shimmering wall. She walks beside it, feeling the cool promise on the other side, secure in the knowledge that when her own time comes, she will recognize the door by its tenderness. Back on shift, the cycle continues. New patients arrive, some afraid, some resigned, some curious. She greets each with the same even warmth, inwardly inviting her unseen colleagues to attend. Subtle lights answer, a glow by the vent, a silver line along a threshold. She never commands them, she simply leaves space. Over time, others on staff feel the difference without naming it. They speak of the floor as lucky, of nights that run more smoothly here than elsewhere. She lets them believe in coincidence or good management. The truth hums parallel, content in anonymity. What matters is that within these walls and slightly beyond them, fear is thinned, sleep is deepened, and endings arrive holding out gentle hands. One night, near the hour when all her first questions once began, she passes the original room and stops. The wall is quiet, no shimmer, no sign. Yet as she lingers, the shard reappears on the windsill, brighter than before. Within its glow, she glimpses not a figure, but a pattern, overlapping arcs of light, like paths crossing in silent agreement. She understands this as acknowledgement. The story is not only theirs, but hers too. She has become a fixed point these currents trust. Smiling, she touches the shard with one fingertip. It warms briefly, then disintegrates into motes that drift into the wall and vanish. The corridor remains still, but she feels a chorus of invisible nods. After that gentle farewell to the physical token, nothing obvious remains. No shards, no translucent visions. Yet the calm persists, perhaps stronger now, woven into the bones of the building. She realizes she no longer needs visible proof. The evidence lives in quiet things. A child sleeping through the night. A monitor never spiking as high as expected. A final breath free of terror. The missing name belongs to the origin of her trust, but the ongoing work belongs to all who walk or drift along this floor. Every evening, as lights dim and the world quiets, the hospital becomes again what it has secretly been, a lit vessel floating on a cosmic tide of patient, luminous kindness. And now, as you lie in your own bed, listening to your breathing and whatever small sounds live in your room, imagine that hospital floor still humming gently somewhere in the world. Its walls remember how to open into safe light. Its unseen visitors continue to walk through solid matter with the care of cupped hands. The nurse keeps moving slowly down the corridor, unhurried, knowing she is not alone. Let that knowing be yours as well. If fear presses close, picture those quiet, luminous forms standing just beyond your walls, turning edges softer, readying doors you cannot yet see. With that thought, let your mind step through this hour and circle back, resting, subscribing again to the calm of the taken hour.